Okay, so it is with great pleasure and honor that we host Lisa Marchiano today. Lisa is an author, podcaster, and certified Jungian analyst. She is the author of three books published by Sounds True: Motherhood, Facing and Finding Yourself, and The Vital Spark: Reclaim Your Outlaw Energies and Find Your Feminine Fire, and the forthcoming Dream Wise: Unlocking the Meaning of Your Dreams. She is the creator and co-host of the popular depth psychology podcast, This Jungian Life, and has a private practice in Philadelphia. So, Lisa today will be discussing with us her latest publication, which is The Vital Spark. And we'll be all over the place talking about the vital spark and why it is necessary, and so many of the themes in the book. So, co-hosts, I want to say hello to co-hosts Christina and Sarah. Raise your
Hello.
hand so everybody can see
Hello.
you.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
So the conversation will be with Lisa, Christina, Sarah, and I. And then after around 40 to 45 minutes, we will open the floor for 15 minutes for any of the questions that you might want to pop into the chat box. And alternatively, if you just want to jump in and use your mic and make it a bit more lively and live, also feel free to do that during the Q&A session. So, Lisa, welcome again. And we just want to start first by asking you to give us a general view about the book. So, what is this book about? What made you write it?
Yeah, the book kind of grew out actually of a podcast. So, as you mentioned, I have a podcast called This Jungian Life, and my co-hosts and I one day decided that we were, going to talk. We always kind of pick the topics fairly. We just sort of like see what has energy, so they're not really mapped out or anything. And we sort of said, well, why don't we talk about female initiation? So we started talking about it, and I realized, first of all, that I had a ton of energy for the topic. I just felt really jazzed about it. And then I kept on kind of having this fairy tale, oh, and then there's this fairy tale and this fairy tale. And I love fairy tales. They help me think, they help me kind of formulate my clinical understanding of the people that I work with. And when I got off the podcast, I was like, I think that's a book. I think I have a book there. And so I kind of was just mulling on it. But the interesting thing is, you say, well, what's it, what's kind of it about? I don't think I knew what it was about until a few weeks before the manuscript was due. And I was like a little anxious about that, as you might
Yeah.
imagine. But I actually did a dream incubation, and then I woke up and I was like, oh, I know what the book is about. And so the book actually has a thesis statement, if you remember that from seventh grade composition. I don't know what seventh grade is over there, but I'm sure the general idea.
Yeah.
So here's my thesis statement. And I'm going to just read it because I can't describe it any better than I wrote it. There are qualities such as kindness, empathy, and agreeableness that can help us get and stay connected with each other. And there are fiery qualities such as anger, shrewdness, and forcefulness that can help us get and stay connected to ourselves. Roughly speaking, the first set of attributes fosters relationship, while the second set enables personal empowerment and assertiveness. Both ways of being in the world are important for psychological health and growth. Generally, women in our culture are permitted to access and develop the former qualities, while we are discouraged from expressing or investing in the latter. So it's about those other qualities that we might not have invested as much in, and how important they are for getting and staying connected to ourselves and being able to, bring into the world what wants to come through us. So kind of being able to live out our, as Jung called it, our unique pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, you're not promoting disagreeableness in the book, but the sense that I got is that the balance between being agreeable and disagreeable, and that space between Eve and Lilith, and the importance of maintaining this balance during the individuation journey, and the necessity of having the vital spark during individuation, especially as a woman. So maybe you'd like to tell us more about how disagreeableness in certain circumstances is a necessary, well, I don't know if we dare call it a necessary evil, but it is necessary.
You know, I've definitely had some reactions to the book. I've presented a couple times, and you know, if a few people have listened to me and said, "Well, I agree with everything you're saying, but I could never be ruthless, or I could never be or I could never be tricky," and that,
Yeah.
you know, that's and it's always like, really, you know, what provoked that response in you? And maybe I should name the qualities. Shall I do that just to get it
Yes.
out there so
Sure.
that the qualities that I came up with, and this is not with any particular authority, it's just kind of my list. Another woman might come up with a different list, but the qualities are disagreeableness, shrewdness, trickster, desire, sexuality, rage, authority, and ruthlessness. And I know that some people, someone told me they recommended it to their book club, and they were like, "Oh, I don't want to read that." So you know, there we do kind of recoil in a certain sense from these qualities. But as you said, I'm not saying that we should aim to become disagreeable, for example. But the metaphor I think about it is that we can develop our capacity to be disagreeable, and also the consciousness to discern when being disagreeable is necessary and in service to health and growth. And then our disagreeableness, our shrewdness, our ruthlessness are like arrows in our quiver that we can choicefully use when they're the right one for the situation. So a lot of us kind of get to adulthood with a certain repertoire of behaviors. This is how we handle conflict. This is how we handle embarrassment. This is how we handle disappointment. And we just do the same old things we've always done. But sometimes to move forward in our lives, we need to recognize that we actually could have different tools. So, you know, if you're like me, I mean, I think a lot of therapists are kind of conflict avoidant. I'm agreeable. I like harmony, you know, want everyone to get along. So kind of not, you know, knowing what to do with your anger, you know, what I learned to do was just to kind of squash it, you know. Sometimes that's the right thing to do. It is. But what about when you need to give voice to that anger in an effective way to advocate for yourself or bring about positive change or move forward? That's a skill that has to be learned, because I certainly didn't learn that growing up. So, and I mean, I think, you know, I come up with that list, and I think, you know, I think about the women I've worked with, for example. I think maybe I read that list, and some women think, oh yeah, that one, that one, that one. I don't have a problem with that one. I don't think everyone has a problem with all of these. And some women might only have a problem with one or two. There might even be women, I'm sure, who are like, no, that's not, I got that. You know, but for many women, at least according to my observation, will struggle with a couple of these. So I think I sort of answered your question, although I didn't directly address agreeableness. I'm happy to go back there if you like.
I mean, you totally answered it, but yes, of course. I mean, if you'd like to talk about agreeableness and maybe the positive aspect or the limitations of it, then
Yep.
that would be great.
Well, you know, agreeableness is one of the big 5 personality traits, and so there's a fair amount of empirical evidence about agreeableness, and women are more agreeable than men. And I think that's a pretty robust finding. For those of you who maybe are more familiar with research, you can sort of fill that in. But I believe, like I said, it's pretty robust. It's been repeated. It's kind of cross-cultural. We are more agreeable. We're more likely to kind of seek harmony, to tell the white lie rather than sort of giving the confrontational and uncomfortable truth and that kind of thing. So being agreeable is a great quality. It means you're likable. It means you're a good team player. It makes you a valuable employee. It makes you a good friend. It makes you someone who's fun to be around. And it can really yield dividends in all kinds of ways. I mean, first of all, it makes you, you know, what we're supposed to be in the early part of life, or, you know, the things we're focusing on are, as Freud said, love and work. And being agreeable can be really helpful in both arenas, you know. Certainly when you're starting off on your career, if you work in an organization, being agreeable means that you, you know, raise your hand to volunteer for things, that you, again, are a good team player, that you're not scrabbling for, you know, you're not overly competitive, and that can often result in raises and accolades and promotions to a point. And then I know some women get to this point where, like, well, being the nice girl is actually now working against me, because people just still want me to go out and, like, fetch, metaphorically kind of fetch the coffee, while the more substantive projects are going to people who maybe, you know, advocate for themselves better or present with more authority. So agreeableness has some good qualities. It also has some bad qualities. One of the negative qualities about being agreeable is it can be kind of false. You know, it often means that we kind of stifle down other reactions. And in the story, in the book, I used the story of the Frog King, which many of you probably know. Very agreeable princess loses her ball, and the frog fetches it for her, but makes her promise to bring him back to the palace and let him eat off her plate and sleep on her bed. And she gets her ball back, but she doesn't want to bring the frog back to the palace. And eventually she does. And she finally gets so disgusted and fed up with him that she flings him against the wall. So
And it was
that she
precisely that moment that changed.
Yes, that's when he turns into a handsome prince. So that it's her finding her authenticity and her no that brings about the transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that power in that no, and being able to sort of, I guess, not find our voice because we've always got it, but being able to sort of engage in it and being able to verbalize it. So hi, Lisa. I'm Christine. I'm an art psychotherapist by practice in the UK. Some would say Jung was the father of psychotherapy. So it was very interesting looking at the myths in the book in particular. My question I have, which is almost at the back of what you've been speaking about, I've been working in the field of bereavement for around over a decade now. And I've definitely noticed differences in the way people grieve,
Yes.
especially my female clients or service users. In particular, I guess parents, mothers. And I think I was thinking a little bit about just them, and I guess when they are on their bereavement journey, how much of or a part of themselves they need to almost kill off or disconnect with or disassociate with when they are grieving, in order to fulfill the different roles and their different sort of parts of their identity, like being a mother or needing to, I guess, have that I guess double pressure of financial or strain on the family. And I was specifically thinking about those 8 qualities which you were speaking about. And I guess the importance of being able to connect with them in order to sort of form this new or enter this new sort of life journey that you will be that you'll need to encounter or go on in order to connect back to life. I'm trying to form my question for you, Lisa, actually, whilst I'm talking. But I think I was thinking a bit about the role of the therapist as well in that sort of relationship, and how we might sort of encourage that connection again.
Well, first of all, you've raised such a fascinating question that I've never really thought about before, but like how this type of personality change that or development that I discuss in the book might relate to some major life transition, like a major loss.
Yeah.
And I'm what I'm thinking about, and I don't, that isn't, I don't work, I obviously have worked with people with loss before, but I haven't, it's not an area of specialization.
Yeah.
And so of course that is a whole huge, tremendous area. And I'm thinking that any major loss is a real initiation.
Yeah.
And we do emerge from those events changed. We are different. When I think, and I could really see how one would have to would be stained a few shades darker after going through something like that. That if there was a kind of naivete or a tendency to be overly sunny, that might be that might be burnished a bit by an experience of a major loss, or maybe filled out,
Yeah.
made fuller is maybe a better way to think about it. What I would say in terms of kind of what is the role of the clinician in this, I think it's I think it's related to something I mentioned a minute ago, which is, I mean, it's just, it's the work that we do all the time anyway, right? We help people understand their patterns.
Yes.
So when a person, a man or a woman, is in a relationship, say, where, let's say, he's always attending to her needs and has a very hard time asserting his own needs. And this goes back to a childhood situation, and we can trace it through all of his relationships. And then he starts dating someone new, and we can say, oh, look at that. Look there, that is again.
Yes.
And so, because in a sense, I think the whole book is about, you're going to have your things that you do. We all have them. And some of those things will be good, and some of those things will be good a lot of the time. But there are other, I'm going to say, behavioral repertoires that you could call upon that would make you more effective in the world.
Yes. Absolutely. I can't help but think a little bit about I guess that guilt or the ability to allow yourself to connect back with that spark or that desire or that I guess all the qualities that we are, as you speak in the book, as women or men or other, who might be seen as a selfish quality. And when you go through something like a bereavement, and maybe when you are in that part of needing to look after, how much of ourselves I guess we don't allow that joy or pleasure to enter, because that responsibility almost feels so enormous about everyone else around. But yeah, it's exactly that, I think, in terms of the role of the therapist, of kind of what we always are trying to do, or the role of the clinician when we're working with the service users, just to help, I guess, that person sort of identify those patterns, like you said. I'm also a bit interested about the role of the clinician themselves, because in the works that we do, I guess there's so much of a focus on the service user as it is our work, and how much, I mean, I'm not sure, but how much of us as in authentic selves do we give to that client, and how much of it would be really beneficial for them to see in us, if that's making any sense, or if I've
Mm-hmm.
phrased it in a way that makes sense, Lisa.
I'm not exactly sure what you mean,
Yeah.
but I'll answer the question I think you
Yeah,
asked.
go for it. Yeah.
You know, first of all, you know, I want to say that in some way, you know, I love Jung, and I also enjoy the challenge of trying to translate his ideas into, okay, what does this actually look like in someone's life?
Yeah.
So I've thought a lot about individuation. What does that actually look like? And, you know, individuation, of course, was Jung's idea that we continue to grow and develop through across the lifespan, and that we're growing toward wholeness. And he uses it in a bunch of different ways, and he always seems to mean something slightly different. But it really is kind of some sense of, you know, if you want a kind of poetic version of it, becoming whom you were meant to be. Might be one way of putting it. But again, in trying to think about what this actually looked like in someone's life, here's the somewhat ridiculous metaphor that my unconscious put forward. Okay. It's like any of us are artists that are usually only accessing 5 or 6 colors.
Yeah.
But really there's like 30 colors that we could be accessing. And as we become more individuated, we're able to use more and more colors. And we can make a choice about which color we're going to use. In some sense, that's individuation. And I think that it does relate to how we are in the consulting room. I mean, the consulting room is almost like a little kind of miniature version of us out in the world, right? I mean, I will tell you, my weakness as a clinician is it's difficult for me to confront clients and tell them things that are difficult. And I know I am not alone in this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alone in this.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
And it does not do our clients any good to hold back and not say the thing that needs to be said. I know, Karen Marotta makes this point in one of her books about how, young kids will give each other feedback. Oh, you're being bossy. I don't want to sit with you. And then we adults go, oh, no, you have to be nice.
Yeah.
Right. But that feedback that they get from each other is actually really valuable. And at some point, we all get really nice and we stop giving people feedback. And I know I've had these people on my caseload. I'm sure you've had them too, who have a lot of difficulty out in the world, let's say in relationships or at jobs. They're always getting fired. They're always getting ghosted. But they don't know why. They don't know why, because no one tells them the real reason that you know why.
Yeah.
And it's not a kind thing to withhold that information.
Yeah.
So I think that actually, to be a really good clinician, you need as many pots available to you as you can, including obviously empathy, kindness, attunement, nurture, all of those good things that come more easily to most of us who are therapists. But sometimes you need to be able to be kind of ruthless.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
So I hope I interpreted your question.
Absolutely, you did.
Okay.
Thank you for understanding it.
Yeah, this is fascinating, Lisa. Thank you so much. I'm Sarah, and I am not a clinician. I am more on the research writing side of depth psychology. And but I just find all this really fascinating. And I'm wondering, I know you've gotten into it a lot in the book on the fairy tales and archetypal images and all of this. I wonder if, not only from a clinical point of view, but just sort of for lay persons making these transitions, what feels really vital to me, and this vital spark, is that idea of the trickster archetype that sort of comes in and just shifts everything on a whim. And that, archetypal energy can come from all these different places. And you've already talked about many of them, the, dreams and fairy tales and things that when you read them, they just sort of hit, or you have a dream that just won't go away. that kind of thing. I was wondering if you can speak a little bit more to the trickster and how that plays into all of these pieces.
Yeah, it's interesting because trickster is definitely one of the chapters that I've kind of gotten feedback about. Like, are you encouraging people to be manipulative and deceptive? And it's like, well, there are times when that is what is called for. But again, there's always this question of discernment. Like, when is it in service to health and growth? Trickster, as far as I can tell, is often the mode of recourse for those who don't have more formally sanctioned access to power. So if you're the power in the situation, whether it's a government or a relationship or in an organization or a company, you don't usually resort to trickster. You don't need to, because you have authority. You maybe have some kind of force. But if you are somewhat disenfranchised, if you are what just popped into my mind, for opera fans, is I just suddenly thought of The Marriage of Figaro, which of course is about the way that the servants kind of run circles around the count, and there's a lot of trickster stuff that goes on in the opera. That's it's very funny, as they get the better of their master, but it's something you might use if you were disenfranchised in some way, or you weren't in the position of power. But it can give those who may be weaker in some sense power where it doesn't look like there is any power to be had. I mean, there's something kind of magical about it. One of the stories that I tell in the book is this friend I have who was working for like a refugee and aid agency in a West African city in Liberia, I think it was, and there was some civil unrest, and things were going a little screwy in the capital, and I think he was at the office, and a truck full of young men came by and sort of ushered him into their truck. And they were hanging out the back of the truck, and they're making all kinds of noise, and they're behaving very wildly, and he has no idea what their plan is. But he was a very astute, savvy person, and he knew that they didn't know what they were going to do with him, and that he could shape that. So he just started saying things to them like, "It is so nice of you guys to make sure that I'm getting home safely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's so honorable of you." And they took him back home. And to me, that's a lovely example of trickster energy, because he was really, in that particular situation, had very little power, and things could have gone totally the other way. But he met the situation with a certain kind of trickster energy and shaped the outcome. So, and I think that the same thing can happen. I did some consulting with a corporation where it's a very kind of male dominated culture, and the women were just talking about how hard it was to get power, really, of any kind. And the ones who were successful used a lot of trickster energy. And it might just be like, I can read him, and I know that flattery will go a long way with that one. And so every time they have an interaction with him, they just it's like, "Oh my gosh, are those shoes Italian? Those are beautiful. Did you get them in Italy?" That kind of thing. And is it a little deceptive? Yes. Is anyone being hurt by it? Absolutely not. Is it effective? If you do it right, yes, it is. And so it's we shouldn't hold ourselves aloof from being able to make use of that kind of it's a sort of kind of covert power that often just involves being able to read the situation well and deciding just what little ingredient will help move things forward.
Mhm.
That's the thing with diplomacy, isn't it? Like when someone is being diplomatic, there's a lot of trickster energy, and at the same time, there's a lot of agreeableness to the way you are performing the trickster, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I mean, we are as a species, I think it was someone who was doing primate observation. It was probably Jane Goodall, but I don't recall right now. But I remember the finding was that the chimps who were a little deceptive, who could be mendacious, who could find a cache of food and hide it from the others. I don't know what the other behaviors were, but who could deceive were more socially successful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is kind of in our DNA, and so I really appreciate your point about diplomacy, because it's an important skill to have, to go back to the idea of the arrow in the quiver. It's not, you should go through the world deceiving everyone and being really manipulative. No, that's obviously no. But diplomats develop a skill, and as you said, it kind of becomes a performance. And it's a very conscious use of these skills, if you were, behaviors, toward hopefully a good end. I mean, good diplomacy can do a lot of good in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. It could also, I mean, I think it was Ian Fitcher's Bird, the fairy tale that you spoke about, the three sisters, Ian, and it shows how the trickster can actually save your life. So with the third sister, I mean, she had to kill the guy in order to save her life and bring her other sisters back to life. So
Yep.
she had to put on a show in the beginning.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, when someone said, and when I was talking about the book, someone said, I would never, I don't agree with trickster. I would never want my daughter to be a trickster. And I just kind of said, really? Because being a trickster has saved my life. I hope to hell my daughter has learned to be a trickster. And the interesting thing about trickster fairy tales is most trickster fairy tales involve male heroes. When the trickster ability is put to use in service of finding one's fortune. So I'm thinking of Jack and the Beanstalk, or one of my absolute favorites, Puss in Boots. I love both of those stories.
Yeah.
But, Puss in Boots is a great example of a trickster tale, because I'm not going to be able to recapitulate it very well, but just to give you a sense, the miller has 3 sons. He dies. He gives the first son the mill. He gives the second son a sack of gold, and he gives the third son a cat. And the third son's like, what am I going to do with the cat? But the cat is nowhere near a cat, and so the cat instructs him on what to do. That is, it's all trickery. And he tricks his way basically into marrying the king's daughter. It's a delightful, delightful story. And of course, Jack and the Beanstalk, which most of us know pretty well, Jack goes up the beanstalk for adventure. He's not trying to save his own neck. He goes up and he goes back and he goes back again to get the treasure. So male trickster heroes in fairy tales tend to mostly be about finding the treasure, having an adventure. Trickster heroines mostly are saving themselves or someone else from predation, just like in Fitcher's Bird. And it was actually a little hard to find a fairy tale where the fairy tale heroine was using trickster energy in service of getting treasure.
Right, right. And there is this life-saving quality tied with the trickster, the female trickster energy. Also a very famous fairy tale in the 1001 Nights, the fairy tale of Shahriyar and Shahrazad. It's the same thing. So she keeps telling him stories and stopping at the cliffhanger for 1001 nights in order to save her life. And she does in the end.
Yep.
Maybe it did do her some service as well, because she ended up being the queen who didn't die.
Yes, right. But it was, I love that story. And as you know, it's in my book, and you say it so much better than I ever could.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it is a great story, and it's a lighthearted story, but it's also, I mean, she's dealing with like imminently being beheaded, but
Mm-hmm.
and she is able to kind of hold him off through trickery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also love the image that you gave towards the beginning about the coals burning underneath the ash, and
Ah,
that is such a poignant image to hold on to, I think, throughout the book, because it really feels like that, you know, all of these things are sort of burning within. If you go chapter by chapter, those we all have, and that's so much of Jung's psychology, you know, that we all have all of that. It's just finding the access, and how and where do you find that access? And it sort of came to me, I don't think you speak about it at all in the book, but the myth of Hestia, and this
mm,
idea of
Mm-hmm.
Hestia as the hearth. And it's,
mm,
she is always spoken of in female terms, but is never depicted as a female really very often.
mm.
It's more that it is the hearth at the center of the home, or the, you know,
Interesting.
so this idea of that being the central space that we all have access to, but it may be covered over. We need to sort of dig around and tend
Mhm.
to that area, whatever area it is in our life. I think that really carried through from the very start, in that sort of unspoken way, but you could really feel it throughout. And so
Well,
I just love that.
yeah, that's lovely to bring in Hestia. Thank you for that. I hadn't thought of that, but she would have been a nice addition. Yeah, that was Jung's quote, and I found that, and I was like, oh, there, that's perfect. You know, you know, it's something like too much of life is, you know, sort of cut away on the lumber room floor, but some of this remains glowing coals under gray ash or something like that. It's very poetic.
Mm-hmm.
And it is like that. And of course, you know, really what we're talking about is shadow. You know, the things that we had to disavow in the course of development because they were not prized by our culture, by our caregivers. And then when we can come back into contact with them, they're, you know, later in life and midlife or thereabouts, it's very vivifying. It's enlivening. But you know, I didn't, I think I mentioned briefly shadow in the book, but I didn't frame it like that because, yeah, why, you know, it's much better to just sort of speak about the phenomenon than kind of go through the labeling. But yeah.
Yeah, but that is so much that, I mean, the gold in the shadow, those coals that are hiding underneath that ash is just, um, yeah, I just think it's very vital, especially with the title of the book, The Vital Spark, you know,
Yeah.
having that idea of all that just sitting there burning and
Mhm.
waiting to come to the surface. It's really, really beautiful.
I found a slight parallelism here with an idea. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's pretty much similar to what Stephen King in his essay, Why We Crave Horror Movies. It's about horror movies and why people enjoy watching them. I mean, I personally don't, but his theory is that you need to feed the inner alligators. So the inner lyncher, as he calls them, needs to be constantly fed.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, so it is some kind of disagreeableness that you need to be in touch with from time to time in order for it not to resurface in a bad or harmful way.
Mhm.
And you also touch upon the idea that, the unlived life. So taking off that part, that vital spark, those disagreeable qualities that you actually need in order to survive and individuate and defend yourself and protect yourself. So once you are cut off from those, you are risking the danger of not being able to take care of yourself, not being
Yeah.
able to individuate.
I mean, potentially risking not being able to take care of yourself in a basic way. Like if you're accosted, can you stand up to your attacker and, either run away or whatever, but if you can't access these qualities enough, you might be too passive to even just, protect yourself in some kind of, confrontation. But yes, I think they are important for also, other kinds of development. So yeah. You've used the word selfish. The word selfish has come up a couple of times, and I think that, and it is hard to think of ourselves as selfish. It's hard to be selfish, but there's this really wonderful quote by Edward Edinger, who of course is a Jungian analyst. I'm going to read it if you don't mind. In my experience, he says, the basis of almost all psychological problems is an unsatisfactory relation to one's urge to individuality. And the healing process often involves an acceptance of what is commonly called selfish or power seeking. The majority of patients in psychotherapy need to learn how to be more effectively selfish. Isn't that a great phrase? Effectively selfish. And more effective in the use of their own personal power. They need to accept responsibility for the fact of being centers of power and effectiveness. So I think that kind of gets at this too, that's we have to take responsibility for ourselves and being able to be effectively selfish, not cruelly selfish, not wantonly selfish, not selfishly selfish in a way, if you will, but selfish in service to something higher, which might be our own urge to individuation. I mean, sometimes it does look quite selfish in the most common understanding of that word, but if it's in service to our own unfolding, it might be that it has to be.
Right, absolutely. And that's what we loved about the book, how this well, maybe not really self-love, but how being in touch with the other colors of the palette that you're not using that are within the self, how it actually helps you paint a better picture and a better life for yourself and also for others around you. So thank you so much, Lisa, for this. I mean, we could go on and on and on forever. This is wonderful. And so the book here is called The Vital Spark. If you haven't read it, all of us highly recommend that you do. It is an incredible book. And Lisa, we can't wait until your next book is out as well. Would you like to tell us a little bit about it? So just like a little glimpse.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about it. It's called Dreamwise, Unlocking the Meaning of Your Dreams, and it publishes in the US on November 12th. And it is published by Sounds True. And I want to say that what we set out to do was really to make Jungian dream work very digestible, accessible, without sacrificing the depth. And I think we did it. And I'm super excited about it. I think it's really unique in terms of books on dream work. I think it will be great if you're new to dream work, but I think there's also a lot there for people who are more experienced with it. And it really is like a dream work manual that I hope is also fun and entertaining to read. So.
Well, I'm sure it is, and we're very excited about it, and hopefully we'll have another chat with you once the book is out.
That'd be
so
great.
Thank you, Lisa. And we're going to open the floor for questions now for the next 15 minutes. So I'm going to put it on gallery view so I can see you. So is there anybody who would like to jump in and ask the first question?
There's already one in the chat. Don't know if we want to.
Okay.
That's from Paula.
Okay. What do you mean by agreeable? Please define. I think we've already done that. Maybe this question was asked a little earlier. And how are men not agreeable? Do you really think Kamala Harris is fetching the coffee?
Well, so first of all, I think one way to use the word agreeable is in this sense as a kind of a big five personality trait. And I'm not sure exactly how the researchers define it, but I think it carries with it the sense of being like cooperative, polite, kind, appreciating harmony, altruistic, trusting. And what they found, I mean, this is not me, this is research, and I think pretty robust research that among those big 5 traits, there's not a lot of difference between men and women, except that women are higher in trait agreeableness and neuroticism as well. But I would refer you to that research because I'm certainly not an expert in it. And it's not, I'm not saying that every woman is fetching the coffee, and I'm only meaning that metaphorically. I'm have worked with young women, let's say, in their late 20s or early 30s, who are in corporate environments where their conscientiousness and agreeableness really, makes them very liked and valued members of the team, but they get passed over for the bigger promotions because they're not thought of as the heavyweights, because they're nice, and a lot of times what the trait that is looked for in for leadership. I mean, I didn't say this in the book. This would be an interesting thing to explore because I think it's true. I think that leaders especially need to have the qualities in this book. I mean, I'll tell you a personal story on myself. I was in my late 20s, and maybe I was even 30. I can't remember. Anyway, I got to be the vice director or vice president. I can't remember the title of this refugee organization that was working in Bosnia in the 90s. So I was the number 2. I was the deputy director. That was the title. I was the deputy director. And God, I was not ready for that job. And some employees came in, and they were 2 men, and one of them was a little bit older than me. Maybe they were both a little bit older than me. And they came in and they said, hey, we'd really like to use the agency vehicles for this personal thing this weekend. And like, the answer should have been, what are you talking about? Of course you can't. But I said yes, because I didn't even know how to say no. And like, I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't know what to say. And that's what I mean about agreeableness. And for me to be a proper leader in that situation, I said, I'm really sorry, you can't do that. That's against our policy, but I didn't have contact with these qualities. So I couldn't have been a leader at that point. I was completely inappropriate to a leadership potential because I didn't have my hands on those qualities. So that's what I'm talking about. I should have put that story in the book too. Put it in the next edition.
Yeah, maybe. Thank you, Lisa. Other questions? We saw a hand a moment ago and it disappeared, so you see anything in the chat? Anybody? No. I think it was just Paula's question. Okay, so if no one's asking, I think I will jump in with another question of mine. Lisa, we didn't mention shrewdness, but I love your chapter on shrewdness. If you could tell us a bit more about shrewdness and as a tool for women.
Well, what I mean by shrewdness is that just ability to let yourself know what you know. So a lot of times we can see the world sort of as the way we want to see it or the way we think it should be. And that can really hold us back. So just being able to sort of face what is, and then you can deal with it. You can deal with it better if you know it's there. So I use the story of Snow White in that chapter, and I think she's a great example of what I think of as an innocence complex that really holds her back. Because if you remember, once she's in the woods with the 7 dwarves, they leave for that day. They say, "Now, Snow White, don't open the door because your mother's going to come looking for you." And there's a knock at the door, and Snow White looks and says, "Oh, that's not my mother." And she says, "Oh, what are you selling?" And she sells her, I think, the laces the first time, and lets the woman in. She lets the witch in, and the witch laces her too tightly, and she falls down as if dead. And the next day, the dwarf said, "Now, Snow White, you can't open the door." But then there she is. She opens the door the next day to the queen, and this time it's a poison comb. And then finally the third time, is the poison apple, and that kind of does her in, at least for a while. So she's kind of stubbornly innocent, instead of just being like, my mom is not a nice person and I cannot have her over anymore.
Ah, well, thank you for that, Lisa. Any other questions here? I think, yes, Katya. Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Katya.
Hi. So my question is about boundaries, because I've had some experience with that. When other people put boundaries, or I do them for others, then it is looked at as disagreeable.
Yes, it is.
So can we talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. That's a great example, Katya, because I think sort of saying like, no, it really doesn't work for me to X, Y, or Z, whatever it is, and I've decided that that just does not work for you to I don't know, drive half an hour out of your way to pick someone up, or whatever it is. And then people can be disappointed and angry because that's not nice, and the story I tell in the book, which I think is related to boundaries, this is just such a great story, and it's totally true. So when I worked for that relief agency in Bosnia, I had an older friend. She must have been in her 50s or maybe even her 60s at the time, and she was a great cook, and she had this nice house, and she would invite us all over for dinner. We're a bunch of young people. She would make us this great meal, and the first time I went, we're sitting on her roof deck. I'm having a glass of wine. I'm talking with someone. We're nibbling dessert. She comes upstairs. She goes, "Okay, this was really great, but I'm going to bed now, so you all need to leave." And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe she just did that. But then I was like, oh, that's kind of awesome, and I really get it now, because sometimes you have people over and you're like, oh my God, I'm tired. I'm still not quite as good as my friend Terry is, just like marching in the room and saying, like, this is my boundary. I'm done. I made you dinner. I'm glad you had a good time. Now go. So yeah, it's,
that's amazing.
Sorry?
It's amazing. It's a talent, actually,
It is a
being
talent. It
able
is a
to
talent.
put those boundaries that way without having anyone feel upset.
It doesn't have to have drama to it. And I think, Katya, maybe the kind of central thing is, like, you have to be willing to bear the other person's being upset with you. You have to be able to tolerate you have to tolerate the discomfort of knowing that you made them unhappy, which especially for many therapists, we like people to like us. So that can be hard. Yeah.
Definitely. And for people pleasers, I think, who absolutely struggle with that, like even familial stuff and different sort of places, whether it's at work or family or with clients. Sorry, I'm still in the office, so it's a little bit loud in the back now.
We can't hear anything, don't worry.
I'm trying to put in my boundary. Not sure if I'm assertive yet.
That's a good question.
I mean, yeah, this whole thing with boundaries and people pleasing, and yeah, it could be a challenge. I mean, I personally also face it, especially at work, with people. For example, sometimes we have conferences where people need to pay a fee, and then I get those emails asking if they could just come in and present for free. And I have to say no, firstly, because it's unfair for everybody else, and also because we provide many other free initiatives for those who, would like to join us from time to time for community building and stuff. So they do actually have other options. But yeah, I mean, there are times when we wish that we could please everyone, but we just can't because it doesn't really happen that way. And yeah, enter the vital spark. And this is how we use it as a good tool.
Yeah, I was going to add to that, Rula. It's almost like a value, isn't it, as well? Like a value we'll place on ourselves as well, and what kind of weight we hold. Because when we're kind of constantly giving in or constantly agreeing, that agreeable place, then what does that mean for us and the value that we hold for ourselves, I guess.
Right, right, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why many of us change jobs or places we live in. And, it's also a cause for major change. And sometimes it's a good motivation, actually. The moment that you realize that, you know what, this is enough, and I need to focus more on my disagreeable side, then maybe this is what keeps you moving. This is why it's, as Lisa put it, it's something necessary for our own individuation, for our own development. We're actually reclaiming it because it's there, but we're not using it all the time because we are too busy pleasing others around us.
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly.
Right. And okay, we have time for one more question. If anyone has one more question before we take a 5-minute break and then move on to the creative part of Psycreative. Lorna. Hello, Lorna.
Hi there. So I haven't really formed my question, but it is, for example, well, I think anger is something that many cultures, not all cultures, perhaps especially Western, really struggle with because we are taught, from day zero, to not acknowledge our anger, not feel it, not express it for sure. So when something comes up that makes one angry, I'll just speak about myself now. What I've noticed recently is that, I've been doing IFS, so I have my different parts, my different voices. So, the first one that comes up is like, and that's not the one who I share with that person. I do find I have to wait, an hour or two, maybe even a day. It used to be a lot longer. It used to occur
Yeah.
2 weeks or 2 years later, but at least it's an hour or a day or so.
Yeah.
And I find somebody else comes in and explains the situation. And sometimes if I wait a little bit longer, I can even get a wee bit of humor in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really a question. It's just an observation of, of anger and the delays and, finding the voices and all that sort of stuff.
Well, I mean, that's such a lovely example, I think, because what you're doing is you're letting the anger in.
Right.
You let that first one, that come up, and you're not saying go away, get out of here. You're just like, I'm gonna hold it. I'm just gonna hold it,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna hold it until it shifts a little bit.
Hmm.
And that's, I mean, I think that anger in women, I mean, I don't know, anger in women, I mean, my male colleagues will say, well, men have their issues with anger too, Lisa, and I suppose that's true, but I can't speak to that from the inside. But I think a lot of women, we feel guilty when we get angry. We feel like we have to, there's the kind of court of 1,000 judges to determine if it's okay for us to feel angry.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lauren, I love this example of just like, you just let it be there. You just let it be there. And then you see what wants to come from it.
Yeah.
Because you're essentially, there's wisdom in anger. It's a core emotion, and there's always wisdom in core emotions. And so, but if you speak right from that really hot place, it can be indiscriminately wounding or actually ineffective too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whereas if you listen to it and you value it, but you also let it just settle down a little,
Yeah.
you can speak from that place, with that wisdom and that forcefulness. I mean, going back to the idea of boundaries, you need it requires aggression to set boundaries.
Yeah.
And the anger that comes up, I always think of anger as like, anger lets you know someone just crossed your boundary.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
And you can kind of use that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can set the boundaries articulately rather than ferociously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is, I think, the difference between aggression and assertiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Lorna, and thank you, Lisa. So we're going to be taking a 5-minute screen break. Fill up your teas or coffees or whatever you're drinking and take a little stretch and come back. And I just wanted to check if anyone would like to share a poem with us tonight, because it's going to be an open mic, a poem or maybe a painting. Okay, so I guess we'll start. It's going to be Chris, me, and Sarah. And then if you become a bit more courageous to share with us, then the floor is yours. It's open and everybody is welcome. So we'll be back in 5. Thank you again, Lisa. This has been wonderful. And so we'll be back in 5. See you soon.
I was trying to pull up an image here and it's not working right now. So maybe I'll wait until I can actually get it to come up. But yes, welcome back, everyone. We will have an open mic now for the second half of Psycreative, as always. And I know we have a few people signed up and ready to go. Did Rula or Chris want to go first? Either one of you?
Chris, you might want to go first.
Yeah, I don't mind. I can go first. So I'm gonna read a poem, a sestina, and the title is Grandma Lights Granddad's Cigarette Without Inhaling. The sun burns pine trees on marble stones, scars on the golden gates, his house. 9 months since skewered meat stuck to his fingers. His voice, great constitution, wondering if Grandma will wear colour in her smile again. It's summer, humidity lives on black. Her only suit hangs in a wardrobe, silk black talks on who will carry him as we guess his stone. Laughter shatters glass again. The lemonade comes from the trees behind his house, drifting away from the stem. Grandma takes 7 minutes to peel lemons with withered fingers. A block of ice melts between a trembling finger, the present and open mouth humming black. She sings her silhouettes to sleep. Grandma applauds the last of her stones. Cities she once knew are dying. His house, will she ever live here again? Ancient partitions and melancholy again. At night I stare, count sadness on my fingers, eat breakfast to start a new home. His eyes, a spread of crows, black. She ties her hair, pulls a feather from his back. Grandma presses skin against a stone. Rewind in time, before her time, Mum lays silver spoons on their backs again. A boy asks, do the dead feel the weight of stones? Endings begin between my face and sleeping fingers, curling memories around breath, the taste of black tarmac hot beneath my feet. Thick it sticks to our house. Orange slices sprout out of great grandma. Their snails make room with shells of black. Release my body into his. Again, look closely to what's beyond a loosening grip. Fingers lurking in silence, waiting for stones. This house infectious, built with black. Reach for grandma's fingers. It rains black embers on top of stones. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love that imagery. I can just feel it. Wonderful.
Thanks.
Oh, Rula, you're muted. Rula, you're muted.
Oh gosh,
There we go.
sorry.
That's okay.
I was telling Christina that's the first time I hear her read it out loud. So I've read the poem before, but it's absolutely amazing to hear you read it, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Wonderful. Well, I'll go, I guess. I have an image to share and a small, well, a little essay that goes along with the image. As I was listening to Lisa, I thought this might sort of play with some of the images that she brought into our chat today. So I'm gonna share this. So this image is called The Wheel of Dreams. And this is a little bit about how this came to be. So I found myself remembering many dreams involving objects with old-fashioned wooden wheels, an antique wheelchair, horse and buggy without the horse, as well as covered and uncovered wagons in different configurations. Different objects, but always the image of a big wooden wheel with wide spokes stands out. This became the center of my mandala, the focal point of this wheel of dreams. In the Wheel of Dreams, the images begin in the upper left with representations of spring and continue clockwise throughout the season. In spring, there are flowers of every color of the rainbow: red, roses, orange lilies, yellow daffodils, the green of the leaves, blue morning glories, and purple pansies. All of these in the dreams were in the back of the beautiful old covered wagon. In summer comes the heat of fire. Purple, silver, horseshoe crabs swimming over sand dunes with fruiting sea anemones rolling around them, and mosaic turquoise dragonflies posing on the edge of my memory. In autumn comes the Pumpkin King and Halloween Town, as I titled the dreams. There's a familiar neighborhood and a magic fountain, a battle, a glowing orange king, and a kingdom to be saved by taking up the jeweled sword. Finally, in winter, a wagon ride and a coffin-shaped seats, and a deep well which leads to a tree adorned with decorative keys. All of these images came from dreams I've remembered and recorded. Once all these images came together in my mandala, they created a beautiful picture. Not just a physical picture, but the story. A new dream came together from these 8 randomly chosen ones, and begins to create a unique tale of its own. It begins on a self-assured path towards renewal with full recognition of one's natural talents. From here, we continue on a path through the summer to nurture our spiritual journey. We encounter extreme intensity and are then accompanied by the living past, as well as nourishing symbols of the spiritual depths. As we're leaving summer, we catch a glimpse of the healthful, positive spiritual aspects we've pieced together on our way so far. Upon entering autumn, we begin to reflect, to look to the setting we've become accustomed to with a new facade and find a fresh source of spiritual nourishment. We travel from here to an expanded area, a place where new beginnings reign and playful nature can hold great power. Here we must use this open area as a space to confront and reclaim ourselves. And finally, we follow the path on into winter. The ride this time is for deep contemplation. We are settled in for inevitable transformation and headed deep into the depths. Here we discover the vital component waiting for us in abundance, the piece needed to unlock the next level of enlightenment and put us back to the beginning of our journey. However, this time, when we begin, we are farther along and better prepared than when we started on the path the last time. This is the way of the Wheel of Dreams. We go around and around, all the time moving forward, just like the seasons, which circle around the same order every 12 months. It is a brand new year every time they are reborn. And as we circle our path to wholeness, on our journey to individuation, all these dreams, images, and archetypes help us to move forward, slowly but surely.
So beautiful, Sarah. And I could somewhere in there see the image of the Ouroboros. So it's so beautiful. It's so alchemical. Thank you so much for sharing the beautiful image and the words with it.
Thank you.
Sarah, I really appreciated that, and the images were so evocative, and your words too. And I just have to ask, like horseshoe crabs, are you from the Eastern Seaboard?
Well, I'm from the East Coast, but not on the, not really, I mean, you know, Georgia. I'm from Georgia and I live in Virginia, but not anywhere on the beach. That was an amazingly numinous dream that I had years and years ago, but it just has stuck with me.
Wow, yeah, they're really, they're so iconic, you know. So we don't, you know, I'm not too far from the Delaware shore, and they're a big part of summer for me. So yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sarah, it's really interesting that you know your beginning point is your end point going around the circle, and that you could have begun on any point on the circle, but you began on what the clock would have as 9 o'clock. And that's really interesting to me because for years, I've been working on a mandala of consciousness, and it always starts at that very same point. And it's funny because when you look at a map, you say, well, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And I've always had a problem trying to figure out how you know, what I've been working on fits in with that. But it was really great to see your mandala that started at that point.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It just seemed
Yeah.
like the right place. I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't even really think about it.
yeah, that's what's so interesting, because I can't justify it either. Why do I want to start at that point? I can't, you know, I can't quite figure it out. But yeah, that's the point at which I've started all of those mandala drawings as well. So it's fascinating. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. All right, somebody asked to see it again, so I'm just putting it up there for a second. All right. And
Sarah, Marjorie wants to go next, so we could
oh,
have
yeah.
Marjorie next.
Sure, thank you. I will just say this is a work in progress. It was it's prompted by a comment from a passing cyclist near my home in British Columbia, who pointed out a bear across the river and said, he's across the river in the same place I saw him this morning. And then there are some phrases also excerpted from a possibly not widely known Canadian classic about a woman's sexual awakening with a bear. So that's the context. It's just called Black Bear. I just lost it. There it is. See the bear? He's across the river in that marsh. Same place I saw him this morning. You're wrong, you know, about my sex. You can't smell for shit. Pick your berries with care. Bear aware you are not. My eyesight's better at night. Check yourself, sister. Paddington, Pooh, Smokey, Baloo, an illogical lineage of ursine masculinity. You say it's no big deal. You reject all binaries. Also illogical. Sex is a social construct only until I want it. On a binary scale from 0 to 1, if you are not male, I am not into you. With my fat, freckled tongue, I fellate berries and grubs. Who and what are you? Good question, Marion. Even you couldn't finish, you know, that bear. As if I hadn't heard you for coming for miles. Bear bells give me indigestion. I bear banged last month, not a social construct. My embryo's a weight, suspended, animate, neither 1 nor 0. If I reach a BMI of 30, I'll be seriously hot. If I weigh enough, if my den site isn't paved, if my embryos implant, if my cubs live, if my milk flows, if the traffic stops, if the trees don't burn, if the water is clean, if I can breathe the air, if I am she-bear, I bear cubs, I bear witness, I bear life. Not a dim, flickering, inarticulate psychic life, Marion. Socially, yes, but the only construct is yours. I am she-bear, not he-bear, and if I forget it for a minute, we will all die.
Thank you, Marjorie. Really neat. Very amazing how one image can just spark so much. All right. I saw that Katya wants to share. There
Yeah,
you
that
go.
would be great. Thank you. Just a little bit of a context for this. It's a small flash fiction writing, and I did it in a class. The setting is in old Egypt, somewhere with a pharaoh and a tomb. So I did not think I'd be reading this, but here it is: boundaries and not being agreeable at all. And so their hands clenched as their eyes met eagerly. We will find each other again. I will keep. I don't know, what was that? Okay, I'll start again. Their hands clenched as their eyes met eagerly. We will find each other again. I will keep looking for you. Her lover disappeared under the heavy door of the sarcophagus. Her dark eyes melted into the shadows. She lowered her gaze at the loss, the impossible loss of the one who owns her heart. She could see red flaring in her eyes, her heart in flames turning to the one who orders such abomination. Who is a pharaoh to take with him all of his servants? Who is the royal great wife to be unable to save those she loves? A servant stepped close to her, bidding her to step out of the pyramid for the sacred rites to continue. With tears searing her cheeks, she stood, turned to face the first prophet of Amun, spat anger at his face and resentment at his feet. There was silence, a locking of eyes, a moment stretched into eternity. She pulled her golden dagger, pounced on him in one bound, and with a shriek severed his head. She watched him collapse like any man, like all men. She felt the spears of the guards pressed against her neck. Swerving her arm in a complete full circle of fire, her dagger parried the iron. Then she walked out, the air blowing the ashes off her blackened dress. Thank you.
Wow. I love it. I can't wait to hear more if it continues to evolve. What an amazing story.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Great. And Ray, you have some poems for us?
Sure.
Great.
I'm so sorry I missed the first part. For some reason, the connection never came through. So I'm not going to say anything before the poem, except this is kind of uncharacteristic for me to write something like this. And I'll just read the poem and then I'll try to give some context afterwards. So the title of the poem, can you hear me okay? Okay, the title of the poem is No Resurrection, Yet This Life. Beside the door in our garage, 2 nails were driven through my hands, and on them hung 2 leather belts, too worn to wear, but not to whip. Against the flesh of a young boy who never knew what he had done to his father in the office, where by his works they would know him, and not by her words, which could not assuage the rage my father felt against everyone who had ever abused him in this life. It took me years to understand that he saw them when he struck me, and more years for me to forgive this anger from his own abuse. The next day, I would briefly stare at those belts hanging above me as I rushed into a supper I knew would never be my last. So for those of you who know me, I'm a very spiritual guy and very positive, and this is a very uncharacteristic poem for me, but I've been taking 2 Dostoevsky classes, so I guess I could blame it somewhat on Dostoevsky, but Dostoevsky had a very much of an interest in child abuse, and very much thought that he was a psychologist way ahead of his time. That's why I wish I had heard the talk today. And he really felt that abuse that was encountered in childhood was most often carried on by the parent later in life, that to break the chain of abuse was a difficult thing to do. So the poem has 4 religious references in it, because what Dostoevsky felt, as bleak as his novels are, what he felt was that he was against the nihilists of his time period, the 1860s, and he felt that if you took spirit and Christianity out of the world and everything became rational materialism, that the world would fall apart morally. And it's very interesting reading the novel The Devils today in light of what's happening in our own world at this time. But at any rate, so I gave this to a real good friend to read, and I said, I want some honest feedback on this. Don't spare me. Give it to me. I want some honesty. And so he was perplexed he's a Catholic, so he was perplexed by some of the imagery. He thought that the nails through the hands were too much. So I'm telling this long story because my good friend was a chief counsel for a tech company out in Silicon Valley, Fujitsu, I guess. And after he sent me his reflection on the poem, I sent back to him what Robert Frost says you should never do, tell him what I was trying to do in the poem. And for some reason, he put my poem into ChatGPT AI and asked ChatGPT to analyze the poem. And I guess you can do it if you have a, and I'm totally against artificial intelligence. I mean, I hate the idea of it. The 3 or 4 page analysis of the poem came back exactly what I was trying to get across. And it shocked the hell out of me. to be honest, I said, how is this possible? And I'm still in a state of shock about it. And so I just wanted to tell that story about it. I have one other poem. Do I have time?
Yeah.
That resurrection is a theme with me in my poems, and it's interesting. One way I connected with Dostoevsky is he was really looking for redemption, people's redemption in this life, and one way you can look at Christianity is God man from God down. And Dostoevsky tried to do it what he called the other way, from man to God. In other words, we raise ourselves up, and that means redemption or resurrection would be something that you try to accomplish in this life, no matter what had happened to you. So this poem is called, hopefully on a little bit happier note, Sunrise Easter Sunday Morning. There was a time when Athena walked beside us in the forest just after she flew from heaven to help us reach our long-lost home. How I yearn for her sweet wisdom, the way she would disguise herself so that we might begin to learn how to overcome our cruel fate. We have forgotten to seek her in those sacred groves now cut down, eliminating remembrance of the way oaks embrace the stars. We have broken the blue mirror of the spherical cosmic sky, confined our sight within this pane of horizontal emptiness. Now we can just look out through one single shard of glass at a time. We can satisfy our desires, but have forgotten ecstasy. We only believe what is seen, so we have become an idol fashioned for worship by someone whom we will never meet nor know. Your face is no longer your own, but has become a deception. Still, your soul is the only one who imagines whom you must be, for resurrection is your life. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ray. And what a fascinating story with this. I feel similarly about Chat GPT, so I'm a little gobsmacked as well. It's pretty amazing.
It was amazing because my friend's a devout Catholic, and the things that he could not pick up in the poem that I was trying to get across, I'm still in a state of shock. So
Yeah.
I said to him, I said, you've been replaced by Chat GPT, and I said, and I must be becoming an artificial intelligence poet.
Oh. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing the
Thank you.
poems
Thank you
and
for
the
listening.
story.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else who wants to? I know Rula's got something to read.
If anyone wants to go first, that's fine. So if the floor is open.
I did have a quick question to follow up with Lisa. I was just curious in the spirit of the second half of this session on the creative process of things. I was fascinated when you said you did a dream incubation to find where the book was sort of focusing in. I didn't know if you wanted to say a little piece on that.
Yeah, I mean, I really love dream incubation. I think it's really powerful. And I love the book by Machiel Clerc on dream incubation called Dream Guidance that came out maybe a summer or two ago. It's either 1 or 2 years old, I think, but it must be 2 years old. It's such a good book. And, dream incubation is basically a process where you formulate a question that you sort of meditate on before you go to sleep. You write it down in your dream journal, and then you see if you get a dream that can answer the question. And it doesn't always work, but it often does. It can be quite helpful. And it's an ancient practice too. People have been incubating dreams since ancient Sumeria. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't know if you wanted to share any about your specific experience, or if not, that's fine. I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, so the point is to ask a really, carefully crafted question, and that's what Machiel does so well. And to tell you the truth, I can't remember what exactly my question was. I could find it because I've got my journal here, but I won't put you through all that. But I will say that sometimes what happens is you get a dream, but sometimes you just wake up with the answer, or sometimes the answer sort of hits you the next day. And this was a case where I didn't have a dream, but I woke up and I was like, boom.
Mm.
So that was really cool. So
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's always fascinating to bring the creative, or to, hear sort of the backstage of the creative process when we have authors and academics and things here. So, all right. Anybody else for open mic? Anything to share?
Do you think I could share another one?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. It's just a small poem. When I heard Christina talk about cigarettes and smokes and stuff, it's something I wrote. Thank you. I just want to say there's a word in Arabic called shafi, and shafi means it's a small cup of coffee. that we drink in Lebanon, and it doesn't have any handles or anything. It's just a small cup, and I use it in this particular poem. Coffee and smokes. Little cups of shafe on a plate. Black, sweet coffee keeps my loved ones awake, alert, awaiting a sign to move in or out, the fingers busy with a Marlboro box, opening it, taking a cigarette, traveling to the mouth to relieve an anxiety unbridled. I play with my friends, my fingers to my mouth, blowing smokes in the air, to relieve my parents' fears and their hopeless feelings. I smoke 10, 20 cigarettes, each one's an image of my future. Thank you.
All right, Katya, we see the
Beautiful.
trickster there.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Katya. And Rula.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I'll be sharing a couple of poems that kind of feed into the vital spark in a way. These poems were all written at a time when I was fed up with work, the place I was working in, and Lisa, you talk a lot about how sometimes, you wait for promotions or for accolades and you get them, but it reaches a certain plateau. So it's only to a certain extent that you could ask for things or get things, and then you find yourself doing more than getting stuff. And anyway, so that was the setting of many of the poems, but of course, not all the poems were about that. They didn't really tell my story, but they were inspired by lots of images and a lot of active imagination that happened during that time and sparked some poems. The first one here is called Reclaiming Sophia. And let me find it. Okay, yeah, here it is. It's a short poem and it's about the gender pay gap. I mean, it's not going to say gender pay gap, but anyway, just thought you'd know. We are told that we are born to do certain things, handed biological scriptures, written in double helix, hieroglyphs on ribosomal papyrus. Languidly, they say, leave the bread to the bread makers. The women can eat cake. Too many fairy tales in cuneiform have taught the wrong lessons, engraved in stony things. We shall go back into the kitchen, stilt heels, pink pouts, because there's no philo in philosophy until someone brings Sophia back home. Things will get better when they become stories. So this is Reclaiming Sophia. And there's another poem here that, okay. So it's called Neither Silver Nor Gold. And Ray, like Dostoevsky, I am very inspired by the resurrection image. And the theme is actually a recurring theme in many of my poems as well. And also inspired by my grandmother. So again, my grandmother was a very tough woman who had been through so much in her life. She was born before the First World War, so she actually survived both world wars and saw so many things in life. So the vital spark was pretty much there all the time. And at the same time, she was the sweetest and the most agreeable person in my life. And I actually still wear the bracelets from both my grandmothers, so they're with me all the time, and they do spark lots of poetry. This poem is about it has images from childhood summers when we used to go and visit my grandparents in Lebanon. So you will see that, and there are also references to, allusions to the resurrection theme. And again, Ray, like Dostoevsky, I am Orthodox. So you will see a few words there that also allude to orthodoxy. Neither silver nor gold. My grandmother's rusty water spout would snake down the roof, mimicking the peal of church bells. I found in a secular hymn, Kyrie eleison, we would sing.